Hey, good to see you again. Still German POWs in America. Today isn't about battles or speeches. It's about a tiny moment far from any front line, out on a Wisconsin forest work detail at minus 31 degrees Celsius, minus 24 degrees Fahrenheit, when a hand went to a woman's hair and her whole body read it as disrespect. That sounds small. It is small, and that's why it matters. In lethal cold, a misunderstanding doesn't stay in your head. It moves into your muscles. She doesn't know the story yet. She just wants to finish the day intact. She only knows the rule she lives by. Don't give anyone a reason to come close. The forest isn't pretty in the postcard way. It's flat light, gray sky, and pines that look black against white snow. The wind keeps moving, never settling, pushing powder into faces and down collars. Each breath comes out as a short white puff and then disappears. Snow squeaks under boots, eyelashes clump, scarves stiffen at the edges. Metal tools feel alive in this temperature. Touch them wrong, and they bite. The women work because motion is the only heater they have. They swing axes into deadfall, saw through branches, drag brush into piles, stack cut wood where trucks can get it later. Nothing heroic, just bodies trying to stay warm through routine. Gloves go stiff. Fabric crusts with frost where breath hits it. If someone pauses too long, shoulders start to shake. Not from fear, from the cold doing its quiet arithmetic. They're arranged in a rough line, spaced just enough so elbows don't collide. Heads down, shoulders tight. Scarves pulled up until only eyes show. Wool caps are pulled low, the kind issued too big or too thin, the kind that never fits anyone the way it should. Boots crunch in a rhythm that turns into background noise. Step, scrape, step, scrape. Somewhere behind them, an American guard shifts his weight, and that sound, boots not working, boots just standing, registers more than it should. A standing man is louder than the wind because he can choose to move. The guards don't need to shout to be heard out here. Their presence shapes the line, how fast the women bend, how long they pause, how they pass tools without looking up. Routine is its own kind of pressure. Do the job, don't make problems, don't give anyone a reason to single you out. When someone drops a branch, she picks it up fast. When someone's glove slips, she fixes it fast. Small mistakes can turn into big attention. She is one of those women, and she's learned to keep herself small. Not cowardly, careful. She keeps her cap low on purpose. It's not vanity, it's privacy. Hair is one of the last things that still feels like hers. Under the cap, her scalp feels tight, skin pulled taut by cold and damp. The edge of the wool rubs the same spot above her ear every time she bends. She ignores it. You learn to ignore discomforts because you have to. You don't stop the line for, "My head hurts," not when everyone else has their own hurts. But the cold has its own rules. When you work, you sweat a little, even when your hands are numb. Sweat doesn't feel like sweat out here. It feels like nothing, until it turns into something. Moisture sits in hair, in the thin space between skin and fabric. Wind finds it. Then it stiffens, quietly, without warning. The cap that was just a cap becomes heavier. The hair underneath stops behaving like hair. It starts behaving like a rope left out overnight. The body notices, but the mind files it away under, "Deal with it later." The women don't talk much while they work. Talking opens the mouth, wastes heat, invites a cough that won't go away. They communicate with small looks and small gestures. The guards don't talk much either. Orders are short. Line. Move. Keep going. Most days, everyone is just trying to finish the shift and get back inside. That morning, she's focused on the next cut, the next pile, the next step, until she hears boots approaching from behind, closer than usual, a direct crunch toward her shoulder. Her body reacts before her thoughts do. Shoulders rise, neck stiffens. She doesn't turn. She keeps her eyes on the snow at her feet because turning feels like offering something. The cold air hurts her nostrils when she breathes in, and the sting makes the moment sharper. Here's the question before the moment happens. At minus 31 degrees Celsius, what do you think sweat does to your hair under a cap 5 minutes later? Because whatever your answer is, her answer is fear. She doesn't know it yet, but the next 2 seconds will feel like an insult, and actually be the opposite. The crunch of boots gets closer, and for a second she tries to tell herself it's nothing, just the guard shifting positions, just a routine check. But the sound is too straight, too deliberate, coming right up behind her shoulder instead of passing along the line. Her hands keep moving on the branch out of habit, but her upper body locks. The cold isn't the only thing tightening her. He steps in too close, close enough that her shoulders rise before he even speaks. Then she hears it. Hold still. Not loud, not angry, just an instruction. The same tone you'd use when you're about to fix something that could break if it moves. And then his gloved hand comes forward, reaching for the edge of her cap. The distance between "I'm working" and "someone is touching me" is less than a second. She feels the air change as his arm crosses in front of her. The glove brushes the hairline near her temple, right where the wool meets skin. It isn't a shove, it isn't a strike. It's worse in a different way, because it's careful. Her whole body reads it as invasion. In her head, it doesn't matter what he's doing. In her head, the meaning is already decided. This is where he proves he can. This is where he takes a small piece of you, in front of everyone, just to remind you that you're not allowed to have boundaries. It's not a dramatic thought, it's the thought that kept her alive. Assume the worst, stay ready. Don't be surprised. She jerks away. Not a full step, she can't afford that in the line, but a sharp twist of the head and shoulder, like a reflex yanking a hand back from a hot stove. The movement is small, the message is not. "Don't," she says, and the word comes out rough, scraped by cold. She tries again, louder, because English is slippery when you're angry and frozen. "Don't touch my hair." It lands like a stone. The women around her stop sawing. A blade that was moving in a steady rhythm goes still mid-stroke. Someone's axe hangs in the air for a beat before lowering. No one turns fully. Turning feels like volunteering for attention, but everyone hears, even the ones who pretend they didn't hear. She can feel eyes without seeing them. That's another thing war teaches you. Attention has weight. She keeps her chin down, not looking back at him. Looking back feels like an invitation for him to make it a lesson. In her mind, this is the moment where he chooses how he'll handle being challenged by a prisoner, especially a woman, especially in front of a line, especially when everything is already tense because the cold is doing what it does to people. Her heart hits hard against her ribs. Not from running, there's no running. From expectation. Because she knows how this usually goes. A joke. A comment about her hair. A shove to show the others what happens when you speak up. A shouted order to step out of line. The kind of small cruelty that doesn't need paperwork. The kind of humiliation that spreads because everyone watches and learns. If you were her, after everything you've seen in war, would you read that touch as help or humiliation? Her answer is immediate. Humiliation. Always humiliation. She'd rather be wrong and ready than right and defenseless. The guard doesn't grab her. He doesn't yank the cap off in anger, but his hand is still there, hovering close. And that hovering feels like a threat in itself. The glove is inches from her ear. She can smell the faint leather and sweat trapped in it. She can hear his breathing, controlled, like someone counting his patience. She holds her arms tight to her sides. Her fingers are numb, but her pride isn't. "Hold still," he says again. Same tone, still not angry. That almost irritates her more, like he's speaking to a stubborn piece of equipment, like her reaction doesn't matter, like her body is not a person's body to him, just an object in the way of whatever he wants. His glove touches the edge of the wool cap again, and this time he lifts it, barely. A fraction of an inch, enough to check what's underneath. The wool shifts, and a tight, ugly pull snaps through her scalp. It's sharp enough that she sucks in air. Not a scream, not even a sound she chooses, just breath drawn in fast through teeth because the sensation is wrong. She freezes, now in a different way. That pull isn't the normal tug of hair caught in fabric. It feels glued, like something is attached that shouldn't be. Like moving will tear something that can't be replaced. The guard stops immediately. He doesn't keep lifting. He doesn't test her limits. He pauses, as if he felt the resistance through the wool. His hand relaxes. The cap settles back down the tiniest bit, easing the pressure. For a second, nobody moves. The forest seems to hold its breath too, wind still pushing snow through the branches. A few flakes stick to her eyelashes and melt and refreeze at the edges. She waits for the laugh, for the comment, for the, "What, you think you're special?" Nothing. She waits for the punishment, for him to step around and get in her face, for him to call another guard over and make it a show. Still nothing. The line stays quiet. Even the tools seem quieter, like the women are afraid sound will turn the moment into a bigger moment. Then the guard speaks, and it's one flat word. No sarcasm, no heat, just information. Frozen. She doesn't answer, because she doesn't understand yet what he means. Frozen is what happens to water, to puddles, to bread left out. Not to hair, not to skin, not to a cap. But the way he says it changes the air. It isn't a verdict. It isn't a warning. It's the start of an explanation. And that, more than anything, is what makes her stomach drop. Because it means he is not responding to her as a problem. He's responding to her as a situation. She braces anyway, because she can't help it. She braces for the worst, because that's the posture she knows. But the guard doesn't laugh. He just says it again, softer, like he's confirming it to himself. Frozen. The word should have been an explanation. For her, it lands like a warning. Not because it sounds threatening, because it doesn't, because it's calm. And calm, in her experience, is what comes right before someone does something they've already decided to do. Her fear isn't dramatic, it's practical. In her world, close usually means trouble, and trouble usually starts with something small, like someone taking what's yours, even if it's just dignity. She's seen how power works when nobody's watching, and how it works even harder when everyone is. So she doesn't turn her face. She keeps her chin down like it's a rule. Her jaw is clenched so tight, her teeth ache. Her hands are numb inside stiff gloves, but the rest of her is keyed up, ready to jerk away again if he moves wrong. That readiness is not a choice. It's a reflex. The body learns faster than the mind, and it keeps the lesson. Around her, the line has changed shape without anyone moving. It's the same women, same spacing, same cold, but the atmosphere is tighter, like somebody pulled a cord. Tools hang in hands instead of working. The air is full of small sounds that didn't matter a minute ago. A saw blade creaking as it cools. A breath pulled through a scarf, snow sliding off a sleeve. Nobody wants to be the next person singled out. And that's what her outburst threatens. The possibility that the guard will make an example. A lesson here doesn't need fists. It can be an order to step out, a search, a public scolding, a moment that turns one person into a warning sign for everyone else. The women closest to her pretend they're still focused on their tasks, but their eyes flick sideways anyway. Not curiosity, assessment. Are we safe? Is she going to make this worse? Are we all going to pay for it? One of them swallows hard, the movement visible under the scarf because the cold makes every gesture stiff. Another shifts her weight like she's ready to move away, as if distance could keep her out of trouble. Nobody says her name. Names in a line like this are too intimate. Names are for barracks. Out here, you're a body holding a tool. The American guard doesn't respond the way her mind expects. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't step around into her field of vision and force eye contact. He doesn't grab her arm. That absence of reaction is, strangely, its own kind of pressure. It gives her nothing to fight. It leaves her standing there with the anger she used to protect herself and no obvious target for it. She keeps still because he said to. Hold still. Those words are now a trap. If she moves, she can be blamed. If she doesn't move, she has to endure whatever comes next. In her head, that's how it works. Either way, you lose. She listens for the tone change that always comes, impatience, mockery, that little laugh that tells everyone the guard is about to enjoy himself. She listens so hard, she almost stops hearing the wind. The line stays frozen. Nobody goes back to sawing. Even the ones who want to pretend this didn't happen can't restart the rhythm without feeling like they're abandoning her. But nobody steps in either. Stepping in is how you get pulled out, too. So they hold their positions, watching from the edges of their eyes, letting the moment stretch. Behind the guard, another American shifts his stance, boots crunching. That sound shoots through her like a pulse. She hates that she notices it. 2 guards means options. 2 guards means escalation is easier. She imagines the second guard coming over to laugh at her English, to make a crude comment, to tell her to calm down in a tone that means the opposite. She imagines hands. She imagines being ordered to remove the cap herself. She imagines the humiliation of doing it with shaking fingers while everyone watches. The mind goes to the dark place because the dark place has been right before. And she hates herself for how fast she went there, because part of her knows there's a chance she's wrong. But survival doesn't reward optimism. Survival rewards the person who anticipates harm 1 second before it arrives. So she holds her breath and stays ready. The guard's gloved hand hovers near her cap again, but now it doesn't reach in the same way. It's slower, more measured, like he's working through a problem. He keeps his voice low. Don't move, he says. Different words, same meaning. Still not angry, still not performative. That's when she feels something that isn't fear at first. It's resistance. A strange, stubborn resistance where there shouldn't be any. The wool at the edge of her cap doesn't shift like fabric should. It sticks. Not to the air, to her. She swallows, and the cold makes the swallow feel like sandpaper. She can't look back, so she stares harder at the snow, trying to anchor herself to something that won't change. The snow is full of boot prints and wood chips, tiny dark flecks against white. She focuses on those flecks like they're numbers on a page, anything to keep her from imagining what his hand is doing. A woman 2 places down gives a tiny shake of her head, as if to say, don't provoke him again. Another woman presses her lips together until they go pale. The whole line is waiting for an outcome. Either he punishes her, or he doesn't. Either way, it teaches everyone something about what kind of day this is going to be. The guard tests the cap again, just a fraction, a careful lift. And this time the sensation is clear. The pull hits sharp and wrong, like skin being tugged off a scab. It's not the mild annoyance of hair caught in a collar. It's the kind of pull that makes your stomach drop because your body recognizes injury before your mind names it. She doesn't scream. She can't. Her throat closes. She makes a small sound through her teeth, more breath than voice, and her knees tighten as if the pain traveled downward. She realizes in that instant that the cap isn't just sitting on her head. It's stuck. Not metaphorically, physically. Hair and wool and ice have become one thing, and now there's a new fear layered under the old one. Not the fear of being shamed, but the fear of being torn. The cold has turned her own body into a trap, and if someone panics, if she panics, something is going to rip. Have you noticed this in people? How the body flinches first, and the explanation comes later? Her flinch was already there, ready to defend her dignity. Now her body has a second job: protect her skin. She stops fighting the closeness for a moment because the pain rewrites the priorities. Pride can wait. Blood can't. The guard seems to feel it too. His hand freezes in place, not forcing, not yanking. For the first time, she hears something in his breathing that sounds like focus, not irritation. "Yeah," he mutters, almost to himself, as if confirming what he suspected. Then, still low, still flat, he repeats the word that started this: frozen. And now she finally understands what that word means. Not a threat, not a verdict, a diagnosis. The kind that comes before someone decides whether to pull or whether to fix. Now the word doesn't sound like a warning anymore. It sounds like a diagnosis, something you say when a thing has already happened and you're deciding what to do next. This isn't about control. It's about physics. Sweat under wool, wind on skin, ice forming where it shouldn't. When she worked, her body made a little heat, and under that cap, her scalp got damp in places she couldn't feel. Then the wind found that dampness like it always does. The moisture cooled fast, locked into the strands, and then into the fabric. Hair isn't just hair at -31 degrees Celsius. It becomes a thread that can bind itself to wool, and wool can bind itself to skin if there's a thin film of water between them. If you yank a cap off when that happens, it doesn't just pull hair. It can peel skin. It can tear the scalp in a jagged way that bleeds and keeps bleeding because cold makes everything brittle and clumsy. She's standing there feeling the truth of it in that sharp pull, her own body suddenly fragile in a way she didn't plan for. She had been guarding her dignity. Now she has to guard her skin. The guard stops the moment he feels resistance. He doesn't test it. He doesn't prove a point by forcing it. He holds the cap in place like someone holding down a lid on something that might crack. His breath comes out slow, controlled. "Don't move," he says again, and it's not a command meant to dominate her. It's a safety instruction, the same way you'd tell someone not to move when a splinter is halfway out. He shifts his stance so his body blocks a little of the wind from her ear and the edge of the cap. Then he looks at his gloves, thick, stiff, useful for gripping, terrible for delicate work. He pulls one glove off with his teeth, fast, like he's ripping off a bandage. The bare hand flashes red almost immediately. The cold grabs his fingers and tries to make them useless, but he doesn't hesitate. He brings his fingertips to the seam where wool meets hairline and touches gently, as if he's expecting the ice to protest. It does. A tiny click, not loud but distinct, the sound of thin ice cracking, like snapping the corner of a frozen leaf. He doesn't pull. He presses and breaks. Press, click. Press, click. Small movements, patient movements. The kind of care that feels strange in a place like this, where most interactions are blunt and functional. The women in the line keep watching without looking. Their tools hang idle. No one wants to restart the work while this is happening, because restarting feels like turning away from a threat. They still think it's a threat. She still thinks it could become one any second. He lifts the edge of the cap a fraction of an inch just to see where it's stuck, then lets it settle back when the pull tightens. "Yeah," he mutters, mostly to himself. His bare thumb slides under the wool, searching for the exact point where hair is fused to fabric. The cold has turned her cap into a hard rim. Frost has built up in a crust around the edge, where her breath and sweat and the air met repeatedly. He uses his nail to crack the crust into smaller pieces. Click, click, click. A few flakes drop onto her shoulder and melt into nothing against her coat. He pauses when she tenses, as if he can feel her panic through the stiffness of her posture. She holds still because moving now would cost her. Her neck aches from holding her head in that careful angle, trying not to create a new pull. Her jaw is still clenched, but it's clenched around pain now, not defiance. She can taste metal in her mouth, Not blood, just cold, just the weird taste the body makes when it's stressed. She is aware of the guard's bare fingers in the wind, and against her will, part of her wants to tell him to stop before he freezes his own hand. That thought embarrasses her. Caring is dangerous. Caring makes you soft. She pushes it down. He doesn't make eye contact with her. He doesn't lean in close in a personal way. His focus stays on the problem, like she's a knot he's trying to untie without snapping the rope. The way he works tells its own story. He's done cold injuries before, or at least he's been warned about them. He knows what happens when people panic and rip fabric off frozen skin. It isn't dramatic. It's messy and avoidable. The line behind them shifts again. One of the women puts her saw down carefully, as if any sudden sound will trigger something. Another pulls her scarf higher, hiding her mouth like she's hiding her reaction. Someone whispers in German, low enough to pretend it's just breath. Was macht er? What is he doing? Nobody answers, because nobody knows yet if answering is safe. The guard's bare hand shakes once, not from fear, just from the cold punching through. He flexes his fingers quickly and goes back to the seam. Click, click. He cracks another little plate of ice and slides it out with his nail. It looks like nothing. It takes forever. Each piece is the size of a coin, then smaller still. He's not trying to free the whole cap at once. He's trying to free 1 inch, then another inch, reducing the stuck area so that when the cap does lift, it lifts without tearing. A tiny sting hits her scalp and she flinches. The guard freezes his hand instantly. "Sorry," he says, and the word comes out like it surprised him too. Not an emotional apology, just an acknowledgement that he nicked something with ice. He adjusts, changes angle. Hold. He uses the pad of his thumb now, softer. His skin is raw against the cold air. He mutters, "Damn," under his breath, and she hears it as pain, not anger. Then he glances over his shoulder and calls out, "Johnson, you got that spare cap?" The second guard, Johnson, moves without drama, digs into a pack and tosses a rolled wool cap over. The first guard catches it one-handed, tucks it under his arm, keeping it out of the snow. No comments. No jokes about her hair. No, "Look at this." Nothing for the line to feed on. Just logistics. Would you believe someone would risk bare fingers in -31 degrees Celsius just to stop a prisoner from tearing her scalp? That's the kind of question that sounds naive until you watch it happen with your own eyes. The truth is, the cold doesn't care about sides. The cold punishes anyone who gets careless, and a guard who lets a prisoner rip her scalp open creates a problem for everyone. Blood, infection, paperwork, a trip back to camp, a day disrupted, an injury that could turn worse. Even if you strip it of kindness, the practical reason is still there. But in the moment, practical care and human care can look exactly the same. He keeps working. Click, click. A longer crack this time, and she feels the tension ease by a fraction. The cap edge lifts a hair's breadth without that sharp pull. Her stomach unclenches. He tests it again, still careful. Lift, stop, crack, lower. Lift, stop, crack, lower. He breathes through his nose like he's counting. His bare knuckles are blotchy red now. The skin on his fingertips looks waxy in the cold, and he rubs them once against his coat sleeve, then goes back in. "Don't sweat under wool," he says finally, as if giving advice to a new recruit. "If you start getting hot, loosen it. Don't trap it." His voice is flat, like a manual. But he's talking to her, not at her. To her. She doesn't know what to do with that. She keeps still. She nods once because nodding is safer than speaking. "Okay," he says, more to himself than anyone. "Almost." He cracks one more thin ridge of ice. Click. The sound is crisp, clean, like breaking sugar. He lifts the cap a little higher now, and the pull is there but not sharp, more like stiff hair protesting. He pauses. "Hold still."
he repeats, gentle but firm. He cracks again, frees another section, and then, finally, the cap slides up and off in one slow movement, as if it's releasing reluctantly. Cold air slaps her scalp so hard it feels like being struck. Not painful in a wound way, just shocking. Her hair is stiff, clumped, uneven, some strands stuck together in icy cords. She feels exposed in a way that makes her eyes water instantly. The wind bites the dampness and tries to turn it into ice all over again.
The line behind her makes a collective, tiny shift, as if everyone breathed at once and then stopped. The guard doesn't hold her cap up like a trophy. He looks at it once, sees the rim crusted with frost and hair, and makes a decision. He shakes it lightly, like he's trying to knock off snow. Nothing. It's still stiff, useless for the next hour. He doesn't hand it back. He doesn't comment on it. He just takes the dry cap and lowers it onto her head with the minimum touch, guiding the fabric down around her ears without grabbing hair. He presses it once at the crown so it sits right. "Better," he says. "If it happens again, you tell somebody. Don't rip it. You'll tear your scalp." She swallows. Her throat burns. She still can't quite look at him, but her shoulders drop a fraction without her permission. Not trust, not gratitude. Just the body releasing a tension it had no reason to hold anymore. The guard pulls his glove back on quickly, flexing his hand once as the warmth traps in. He steps back into his own space, giving hers back without ceremony. And instead of a sneer, instead of a lesson, instead of a joke, she gets the simplest outcome possible. A dry cap on her head, her skin intact, and a problem solved. He steps back. The glove goes on. The dry cap sits warm against her ears. The problem is solved, with the kind of quiet efficiency that should make the moment disappear. It doesn't. It leaves something behind in her chest, heavy and sour, because her body had been braced for a completely different ending. What breaks her isn't kindness like in movies, it's the absence of cruelty. She was holding her breath for shame, and there's nothing to fight. Just a man fixing a problem and moving on. For a second, she just stands there, with her hands hanging uselessly at her sides, tool still in her grip, but forgotten. The line is waiting for a signal, some cue that tells them whether they can go back to pretending this never happened. The wind keeps pushing snow through the pines. The world doesn't pause for a misunderstanding. But inside her, everything is out of rhythm. She can feel the heat of anger still in her muscles, a leftover reflex with nowhere to land. She had reached for anger because anger is clean. Anger makes a clear shape. Someone is wrong, you are right, you protect yourself. Fear is messy. Fear makes you small. Anger lets you stand tall, even when you're freezing. Now the anger has no enemy. It just sits there, awkward, like a fist held up after the fight has already ended. She doesn't know what to do with her own words. "Don't touch my hair," still hanging in the air as if they belong to someone else. She can't take them back. She can't explain them. Explaining would require softness, and softness feels dangerous. The cap warms her scalp, and that warmth makes her suddenly aware of how exposed she had been a moment ago. Her hair is still stiff underneath, uneven, clumped in little cords. She imagines how it must have looked when the cap came off, wet and frozen and ugly. She imagines the lines seeing her that way. She imagines them thinking she's weak, careless, incapable of managing herself. That thought stings more than the ice did. She keeps her chin down anyway. She won't give anyone the satisfaction of seeing her face change. But it changes. The tightness in her jaw slips into something else. Embarrassment, maybe. Not the embarrassment of being caught doing something wrong. The embarrassment of being wrong about what someone was doing to you. Because she knows what she assumed. She assumed he touched her hair to take something from her, because that is what the world had taught her to expect. She assumed the cap was being lifted as a performance. She assumed she was about to be turned into a joke. She assumed humiliation was the point. And then the point was ice. Just ice. That truth makes her feel foolish in a way she hates. It makes her feel exposed, not just physically, but mentally, like her fear was visible to everyone, like her whole inner map was drawn in the snow for the line to read. She wants to blame the cold. She wants to blame him for stepping too close. She wants to blame the war, the camps, the years of learning to flinch. None of those excuses change the fact that she snapped at him, and he did not snap back. She hears his warning again, plain and practical. Don't rip it. You'll tear your scalp. The word scalp keeps echoing. It's so specific. It's not the language of punishment. It's the language of injury. It's the language of someone who has seen what happens when the cold wins. It hits her in a humiliating way because it reminds her of her own body, how fragile it is, how little control she actually has. She can control her attitude. She can control her posture. She cannot control what sweat does under wool at minus 31 degrees Celsius. Her eyes water. Some of it is just the cold, the wind cutting around the edges of the new cap. But some of it is something she won't name. She blinks hard, forcing the tears to freeze back into nothing. Or at least, that's what she wants them to do. Crying in a line is dangerous. Crying makes people look. Crying makes you a story. She doesn't want to be a story for anyone. The women around her start moving again, slowly, like restarting a machine. A saw resumes its stroke. Someone picks up a branch and drags it with a small grunt. The rhythm comes back in pieces. But it's not the same rhythm as before. Something has shifted. They don't say it, they won't. But they felt the moment too. They saw a guard step close, saw a prisoner resist, saw the air go tight, and then watched it end without drama. That lack of drama is unsettling. It doesn't fit the script in their heads. One of the women nearest to her finally dares a glance. Not a full look, just the smallest flick of the eyes at the new cap. Then she looks away quickly, as if she's been caught. Another woman's shoulders relax a fraction, not because she trusts anyone, but because she has learned that this particular moment is over. She wants to say something. Not a thank you. Thank you is too big and too surrendering. Not an apology feels like kneeling. But something like a short acknowledgement, a human noise that says, I understand now. She can't find the words. English doesn't come when you need it. And in German, the words feel useless because he wouldn't understand them anyway. So she says nothing. That is her default survival tool, silence. And yet silence is exactly what she hates about herself right now. Silence is what she practiced when she was afraid. Silence is what kept her from asking questions, from clarifying, from seeing what was actually happening. Silence kept her safe, but it also kept her trapped inside her own assumptions. She realizes that with a sudden heat in her throat that has nothing to do with temperature. Her mind rewinds the scene again and again, but now she's noticing different details. The way he froze his hand the moment she flinched, the way he didn't yank, the way he asked for a dry cap, like it was obvious that she shouldn't go bareheaded out here, the way he didn't turn it into a show. That's the part that makes her chest ache. He didn't need to be gentle. He could have been rough and still gotten away with it. He didn't. He acted like her skin mattered because it mattered. And that is not a comfortable realization for someone who has survived by expecting the worst. When you live in constant readiness for humiliation, your body becomes a weapon aimed outward. When humiliation doesn't come, the weapon has nowhere to fire. The adrenaline doesn't dissolve instantly. It pools. It shakes in the hands. It makes you want to shout at somebody just to release it. Have you ever prepared for a blow, and when it didn't come, you didn't know what to do with your own adrenaline? That's where she is, caught between two instincts, the instinct to stay hard and the reality that hardness is unnecessary in this exact second.
It's like her body is still in the first version of the story, while the world has moved on to the second. The guard finishes pulling his glove into place. He doesn't keep watching her. He doesn't wait for gratitude. He doesn't even check whether she's emotionally okay. He checks whether the line is working again. His job is the line. His job is the count. His job is to get everyone back without injuries. That's it. He makes a small gesture with his hand, palm down, the universal sign for keep it moving. Then he points his chin toward the brush pile like he's pointing at a clock. Back to it, he says. No speech, no lesson, no moral delivered out loud. And that's exactly why it hits her so hard.
Because if he had turned it into a lecture about cooperation, about respect, about how prisoners should behave, she could have hated him again and put everything back into the old boxes. But he doesn't give her that escape. He gives her only the truth. This was never about power. It was about preventing a small, stupid injury in lethal cold. She bends to pick up her tool again. Her gloves creak. The wood is rough under numb fingers. The new cap sits heavier than the old one, not because it's thicker, but because it carries a fact she can't ignore now. Sometimes the thing you brace against isn't coming. Sometimes the moment you thought would shame you is just first aid. Back to it, she does. Because that's what you do in a line. You move when you're told. You work until you're told to stop. You keep your thoughts inside your coat with the rest of the heat. The saw goes back into motion. The piles grow. The minutes drag.
And yet the day doesn't stitch back together the way it was before. Even while her hands repeat the same work, her mind keeps circling that one sentence like it's caught on a nail. On the walk back, her head is warmer. Her thoughts aren't. She replays her own words, "Don't touch my hair," and the certainty she felt. She wasn't wrong to protect herself. She was wrong about what was happening. That's the part that won't settle. In her memory, the moment replays in two versions at once. The version she expected, where the touch becomes humiliation, and the version that actually happened, where the touch becomes a kind of field repair, quick and quiet. Those two versions don't fit together. The mind hates that. The mind wants one story. The mind wants a label. Good, bad, threat, safety. The march back to camp is almost silent. Wind pushes at their backs like a hand that doesn't care who it's touching. Snow squeaks again under boots, the same sound it made earlier. But now it's louder in her ears because nobody is talking to cover it. Breath rises in white bursts. Scarves are pulled up, eyes are down. A few women cough into their sleeves and immediately regret it because coughing steals heat. The guards walk where they always walk. One ahead, one behind, spacing themselves like moving fences. No one breaks formation. No one tests anything. It's just a group of people moving through trees in the kind of cold that makes all living things look temporary. The dry cap sits on her head like a small weight. It's warmer, yes, and that warmth is part of the problem. Warmth makes you notice yourself again. Warmth makes the body stop screaming long enough for the mind to start talking. And her mind is talking now, relentlessly, about what she did and what she assumed. The cap isn't a gift in her head. She refuses to let it be that. Call it a gift would drag her into a kind of gratitude she doesn't trust. She doesn't want to feel indebted. She doesn't want to feel softened. She doesn't want to give the Americans a role in her inner life. So instead, the cap becomes a symbol of something she can't name. Not kindness, not mercy. Something smaller and harder. A refusal to turn a moment into a humiliation when humiliation would have been easy. She keeps poking at that idea as they walk, like a sore tooth. She steals quick looks at the guards' faces, trying to catch the gotcha. The smirk that says, later we'll laugh about this. The sideways glance that tells another guard, did you see her? The look that means, I own that moment now. She sees none of it. One guard's face is just a face, red from wind, eyes narrowed against snow glare. The other guard's chin is tucked into his collar, shoulders hunched like everyone else's, because the cold doesn't care that he's holding a rifle. They look tired. They look bored.
They look like men doing a job in weather that punishes every second outside. That's the second crack in her assumptions. Not that they can be gentle, but that they can be ordinary. Ordinary is hard to hate cleanly. She notices other small things she would have ignored before. The way the guard who helped her keeps flexing his fingers inside the glove as if he can't get feeling back. The way he shakes his hand once when he thinks nobody's watching. The way he doesn't look at her again, not to check if she's grateful, not to check if she's humiliated, not to check anything. He already solved the problem. In his mind, it's done. That blunt practicality is almost insulting in its own way, like her inner turmoil isn't worth noticing. But it also means he isn't collecting power from the moment. He isn't feeding on it. Back in Europe, in her memory, closeness always came with an edge. Hands came with an intention you didn't get to refuse. Orders came with volume. A man stepping too near meant you were about to be corrected. Here, closeness happened for a reason she could actually point to. Ice, blood, injury, a simple, "don't tear your scalp." She hates how much that difference matters. She hates it because it forces her to see how her own mind has been trained, how fast it turns ordinary motion into threat. She isn't naive. She's still a prisoner. She still knows a guard can choose cruelty whenever he wants. The rifles are real. The fences are real. The food is still not hers by right. It's issued. The freedom is still gone. None of that has changed. The day has not turned into a movie where one act of decency redeems the whole machine. She doesn't suddenly trust them. She doesn't suddenly like them. But she also can't keep doing the thing she did before, flattening every American face into one monster shape. Because monsters don't take off gloves in minus 31 degrees Celsius to keep your skin intact. Monsters don't crack ice in tiny pieces because ripping would hurt you more. Monsters don't solve a problem and then walk away without demanding a reaction. That realization irritates her. It complicates her. And she feels, stupidly, almost angry at him again. Not for touching her hair, but for forcing her into a mental place where she has to hold two truths at the same time. She is a prisoner, and she was also helped. She wants one clean story. She doesn't get it. What's harder, surviving cruelty or adjusting when cruelty isn't there? Surviving cruelty is brutal, but it's simple. You brace, you endure, you count the days. Adjusting when cruelty isn't there is subtler. It makes you question your instincts. It makes you doubt the reflex that kept you alive. It makes you feel exposed because you don't know which version of the world you're in at any given moment. When the camp comes into view, fences, buildings, the hard, straight lines against white snow, she expects the old feeling to return fully. And it does, partly. Her shoulders tighten again. Her stomach knots, but not in the exact same way. Because now she has this stupid dry cap on her head like a quiet fact she can't throw away. The cold didn't just freeze her hair. It froze her assumptions into one shape. And now that shape is cracking. That crack in her assumptions doesn't make her suddenly soft. It doesn't change the fence. It doesn't change the fact that she walks where she's told, eats what she's given, sleeps under rules she didn't choose. But it changes one small thing that matters more than it should: the way she reads a hand coming toward her. The camp looks the same. The cold is the same. The line is the same. Only her certainty is different, less solid, less automatic. And that's where the story really ends, not in the forest, but in her head. Let's leave it simple. In lethal cold, the body creates emergencies out of ordinary things, and in war, the mind creates enemies out of ordinary gestures. A woman works in a Wisconsin forest detail at minus 31 degrees Celsius. She sweats under wool because the body does what it has to do to survive work. The sweat freezes because the wind does what it does to anything wet. Her hair bonds to fabric. Fabric bonds to skin, and suddenly, a cap isn't clothing anymore. It's a risk. One careless yank, and the day changes from cold and miserable to blood in the snow. That's the whole plot in plain terms. No hero music, no courtroom, just physics. And then there's the human part layered on top of it. The part that happens in less than a second. A guard steps too close, touches her hairline, lifts her cap. To her, it looks exactly like the first frame of humiliation, because that's what her life has taught her to expect when someone crosses that line without permission. Her reflex is fast and honest. Protect what's still hers. Dignity. Boundaries. The small no that keeps you from disappearing inside other people's power. So, she snaps. Don't touch my hair. Not to be brave, but to stay intact. She wasn't wrong to flinch. She wasn't wrong to set a boundary. That reflex is part of how people survive violence. The problem is what the reflex doesn't know. Sometimes the world isn't trying to take from you. Sometimes it's trying to keep you from tearing yourself open on a stupid, preventable accident. The touch that looked like disrespect was injury prevention. That's the pivot. And it's uncomfortable because it doesn't fit the easy moral categories. If the guard had laughed, the story would be clean. If he had punished her, the story would be familiar. If he had made a show of mercy, the story would be cinematic. But he didn't do any of that. He did something quieter. He treated the situation like a problem to solve. He stopped when she reacted. He used bare fingertips and minus 31 degrees Celsius because gloves can't crack ice delicately. He broke the ice in tiny pieces instead of yanking. He called for a dry cap. He warned her about tearing her scalp. Then he stepped back and said, "Back to it." That's the part that lands, not because it's sweet, because it's real, practical, undramatic. And in a war setting, undramatic restraint can feel almost shocking. The cold makes all of this happen faster. Cold compresses time. It turns little mistakes into injuries. It turns small delays into danger. It also turns small gestures into big meanings because when you're freezing, your mind doesn't have extra energy for nuance. It reaches for the quickest explanation that keeps you alive. If you've been trained by fear, your quickest explanation is usually the darkest one. Your body flinches first, and your brain writes a story afterward to justify the flinch. That's not a flaw in her. That's a survival system.
But survival systems can become cages when the environment changes. In one place, close means threat. In another place, close might mean hold still, you're about to get hurt. The same motion, the same hand, the same cap, two completely different realities depending on what you've lived through. And that's the documentary truth hiding in this tiny incident. People don't just react to what's happening. They react to what they believe is happening, based on the last 100 times something like it happened to them. War fills your brain with patterns. Some of those patterns save you. Some of them make you misread the present. Have you ever judged a moment by how it looked instead of what it was solving? Have you ever prepared for a blow, and when it didn't come, you didn't know what to do with your own adrenaline? That's not just a wartime question. That's a human question. The body remembers. The body anticipates. Sometimes it anticipates so hard, it can't recognize help when it arrives wearing the wrong face. So here's the moral, if we can even call it that. It's not poetic, it's practical. Some actions look wrong until you understand why they happen. In that Wisconsin cold, she didn't learn a speech, she learned a fact. Sometimes the insult is actually first aid.